How's everyone doing? Welcome to APIDA 2025. Wane Danielle Humphreys Yaibin. That means hello. My name is Danielle Humphreys. I use she or they pronouns, and it's really nice to see all of you here. I know some people are still waiting in line, and that's okay. We will welcome them as well when they get here. And we're going to just do some announcements and some acknowledgements before we start off the official program. So again, I'm Danielle. I'm the child of Shizuko and the grandchild of Kame, descendants from indigenous Uchinanchu peoples from the Ryukyu Islands, which is now known as Okinawa, Japan. I'm also the child of Albert and the grandchild of Mary, descendants of Italian immigrants on my father's side. I'm a sister, a mother of 3 teenagers. One just became a teenager a couple days ago, and one of them is serving you food out there right now because, you know, their mom is really heavily involved in this event. So go out there and serve the people. I'm also the equity specialist at Whatcom County Health and Community Services and part of the Community Consortium for Community Recognition's planning team, the group that put this event on. And I'll pass it to Deborah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Bineza. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Strategic Initiatives Manager for Equity and Belonging in the Mayor's Office at the City of Bellingham. I come to you all this evening as an immigrant to this country, and so I'm honored to share in the legacy of migration that shapes America. So I'll let you get going.
All right. So we invite you to join us in acknowledging the histories of the land and labor that enable us to gather here today. We begin by acknowledging that we gather on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded homelands of the Lummi, Nooksack, and Coast Salish peoples who have always been here, have been tending the land, waterways, and air of this place since time immemorial, and who are still here and continue to steward the land and perpetuate their way of life today. So please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, the Lummi Nation and Nooksack tribe, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways.
As we begin to reflect on the themes of this evening, legacy, justice, healing, and joy, it is critical that we acknowledge the labor that built our country, institutions, and infrastructures. Our nation depended on the forced labor, dehumanization, exploitation, suffering, wisdom, and skills of enslaved people, primarily of African descent. Indigenous peoples of this land, the Chinese immigrants who built railroads that allowed for westward American development, Japanese Americans whose properties and livelihoods were taken from them while incarcerated during World War II, and migrant workers from the Philippines, Mexico, and Central and South America who have worked Pacific Northwest farms and canneries within harsh and unjust systems. We recognize the immigrant and American-born workers of African American and Central and South American descent whose labor often remains unseen, yet contribute to the well-being of our collective community. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor.
Our shared and individual legacies of resistance in the face of injustice are intertwined, as is our collective liberation. We honor our ancestors and learn from the past as we strive to be good ancestors ourselves and find strength to take action together toward a future of healing and joy. And so now, let's celebrate this present moment, and we'll bring up our MCs for the night.
Good evening and welcome, everybody. We're so glad you could join us tonight for what promises to be an exciting and memorable event. Whether you're a student, a parent, a teacher, or a special guest, thank you for being here to our amazing community. My name is Arav Singh, and I'm a junior at Bellingham High School, and I want to introduce my co-MC, Faith.
Hello, my name is Faith, and I am a student here at Whatcom Community College. I am also a member of the Asian Student Union here on campus as well.
Tonight, we are in a community bound by a legacy of resistance, justice, healing, and joy. By weaving together justice, healing, and joy, we envision a future where APITA communities thrive, drawing strength from ancestral wisdom, storytelling, art, and unity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isa Perez. I am the president of Western Washington's Filipino American Student Association, and I wanted to take the time to just do a brief tribute to the victims from the Lapu-Lapu tragedy that happened a few weekends ago. Many of us continue to struggle with the brokenness felt after the unimaginable tragedy at Vancouver's Lapu-Lapu Festival, where 11 lives were lost and many more were injured. Thank you. What began as a vibrant celebration of heritage and unity was transformed in an instant. Yet the spirit of solidarity endures. Pain and sorrow are profound, but so too is the collective strength of our communities. We stand united in grief and in the resolve to heal in community. I would say that after hearing the news from that weekend, it was something heavy on my heart for, the following days, but I was very moved seeing so much community and solidarity, not just within the Filipino American community, but among all different communities, coming together to honor these victims and to also just show support. And I think, solidarity is something that's very important to practice today and moving forward. And so I would like to invite everyone to participate in something that Filipino culture has. We have a chant, and this is something that our club does, but this is also rooted in Filipino American history. So this is called an Isang Bagsak chant, which means one fall. To add context to this chant, it comes from the 1960s during the farm workers movement led by Cesar Chavez and Larry Itlong. So these leaders were gathering migrant farmers who were advocating for more, better wages and better pay. And there were a lot of language barriers. So something that Filipino communities started to do to kind of bridge the gap between different ethnic groups was a chant. So I'm going to briefly just demonstrate where people would first rub their hands together, and then they would start with a slow clap, like a heartbeat. And then the clap would get faster and faster. And then the leader would raise their hand and be like, Isang Bagsak, and then do one unity clap. So I would like to invite us all to do this since this event is about unity and solidarity. Would people like to just go for it, run or a practice? Practice? Okay, so I'm gonna rub my hands together. If you hear it, it's kind of like a hum in the room. And then I'm gonna lead a slow clap, and then I encourage everyone to do a slow clap and then kind of speed up. And then when I raise my hand, I'm going to start the chant with an isang, and then everyone else will raise their hand. And then when I say bagsak, we all do one clap. Okay, I'm gonna just do practice run. Ready? Isang bagsak. Yay! That was beautiful. Okay, you want to do it again? Okay, great. OMG, yay. Okay. But people want to stand. I think it's a bit more powerful when we stand. Yay! Great. Okay. We rub our hands together again. And let's start our clap. What's up? Hey, thank you, everyone.
Hello again. I am honored to introduce a very special person here at Whatcom Community College, Dr. Jennifer McFarlane Harris, Whatcom Community College's Executive Director for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, here to share a few remarks and offer a warm Whatcom welcome to everyone here. Please welcome Dr. McFarlane Harris.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Whatcom Community College. It is wonderful to have you here in Syrie Auditorium to celebrate APITA Heritage Month through this amazing event. It's the second time, I understand because it's my first time here, but it's the second time that Whatcom has hosted, and we are grateful to partner with you. I am Jennifer McFarlane Harris, she, her pronouns. And I'm also inspired by the introductions that have happened so far and the acknowledgements. So I will also say that I am the daughter of a Jamaican immigrant father and a Swiss-German Mennonite mother, American-born. I am also the new Executive Director for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility here at WCC. And I have the privilege of speaking with you briefly about how much it means to us to host this event. At a time when there is so much apprehension around diversity, equity, and inclusion, when even as we continue to welcome all students and employees into our organizations, some are fearful of drawing attention to affinity groups, highlighting specific experiences of race and ethnicity, or celebrating our cultures, our traditions, our histories. It is a joy and a form of resistance to delight in our shared humanity by living into the mission of C3R. And I quote, "The mission of the Community Consortium for Cultural Recognitions is to celebrate, preserve, and promote the diverse cultural heritages that enrich our community. Honoring our collective diversity strengthens relationships and enriches the experience of being in community." So I would like to thank the consortium members, including the City of Bellingham, Western Washington University, Bellingham Public Schools, Ferndale School District, Northwest Indian College, Chuckanut Health Foundation, Peace Health, Bellingham Technical College, Bellingham Public Library, Whatcom County Health and Community Services, and Whatcom Community College, and I hope I didn't miss any. If not, shout out to you, for putting on this festival, which is open to all students, educators, and community members, and amazing children who I see everywhere. Thank you for coming. Particularly, I would like to thank the co-leads who planned this event, Dr. Janice Velasquez Farmer, Director of EDI for Bellingham Public Schools. Can we give a round of applause wherever you are? And also Whatcom's own Yusuke Okazaki, Associate Director for Intercultural Services. Yes, absolutely. So thanks to the two of you and all the leaders who planned this event and everyone who contributed, and all of you for being here. I so look forward to hearing from more student panels, clubs, associations, and speakers. Please enjoy the celebration of this evening, make connections, meet some new people, music, food, dancing. I'm excited about the DJ, who we already heard. So exciting. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Whatcom.
I'm a little short. Anyways, we are honored to continue celebrating the strength of the Filipino community by inviting FAFSA from Western to sing the Filipino national anthem. If you know the lyrics, if you know the words, please sing along.
Bayang magiliw, perlas Lakas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyang ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baghaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na naglilingin. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di madidilim. Lupang ng araw na ating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang namatay ng dahil sa'yo.
This song. Thank you, Fossa, for sharing your anthem with us. That was beautiful. Now, we are excited to hear directly from some of the voices that make our community so vibrant and inspiring. In just a moment, we will welcome our student panel, who will share their unique perspectives and experiences related to tonight's theme, a legacy of resistance, justice, healing, and joy.
Their stories and insights will help deepen our understanding and spark meaningful conversations. Please, let's give a round of applause for our student panelists, Abigail, Cece, Raj, and our panel facilitator, Emily Henson, who is the library program coordinator here at Whatcom Community College.
Do you want a water? Okay, there's one right here for you. Thank you. Jump it over. I forgot you. Okay, let's try that.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Emily Henson, and I'm going to move this down so I'm not on my tiptoes. My name is Emily, and I use she, her pronouns. As Faith introduced, I am the library program coordinator here at Whatcom Community College. I am also one of the advisors for Asian Student Union here at WCC. I am very honored and excited to be facilitating and being up here alongside some incredible students who are going to be talking to us and telling us some stories and sharing their experiences for tonight's event. So to start off, I will ask each of the students to please share their name, their pronouns, where they go to school, and what they are studying or an area of interest. So we'll go ahead and start with Cece and then make our way down.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Cece. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a student here at Whatcom Community College. I'm currently pursuing a degree in business.
Hi, my name is Abigail Daniela Jerusalem Dormeyer. I use she, they pronouns. I attend Whatcom Community College, and I am pursuing my nursing degree here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raj Bir Singh. I am a second-year student at Western Washington studying biochemistry.
All right, thanks, y'all. So happy that you're here. So I reckon we won't waste any time, and we'll kind of just jump right into it. So students, my first question for you to kick us off and kind of get comfortable is, can you please share a little bit about your family history or cultural roots that have shaped you and your identity? And Raj, we'll start with you and we'll then work our way back up. Thank you.
Definitely. For one, both of my parents immigrated here when they were both very young. My dad immigrated here when he was, I think, about 20 to 25, around that age, after Operation Blue Star, which is a battle that happened in Amritsar, India. And my mom immigrated here when she was 20, married my dad, and started a family, which I'm a part of. Something that both of my parents raised me and my siblings on is that there's no work that is too little or too high of a standard for one to complete. My work ethic is very much inspired by my father's resilience, working 15-hour work weeks or work days with $8 an hour, managing to sustain a family of 5. And my mom was the one that taught me how to cook, taught me how to clean the house. My dad taught me how to do outdoor work and woodworking and all those kind of things that without my parents I wouldn't have. And that influences my work ethic as a student, not only as a second year in biochem, but also with 3 jobs, a council member for the South Asian Student Association at Western, a founder of Sky Campus Happiness. All those things combined, I was only able to achieve thanks to my parents.
So I am Chinese Filipino American. My dad is a U.S. born American here. His family is Irish and German. And my mom is originally from the Philippines, and we're Chinese Filipino. She immigrated here in 2002, and my parents got married in 2004. And 2 years later, they had me. So the best way I describe my household, it is energetic, filled with great food and great music. I have many fond memories. My family and I, we call it lumpia parties, where we sit around and we make lumpia together and we just talk about our lives. And of course, my dad's the DJ, so he just has a lot of really good music going on. And it's just the way that I grew up in my house, and it's by far one of my favorite memories of it. And I carry, a lot of my legacy through the roots of my mom's kindness, but my dad's resilience to always persevere and go through many hard things and hardships throughout life. And definitely I carry that through my studies when it is super tough right now, doing chemistry and biology at the same time. But it is through that I know to push through, because my parents have done hard things, and so can I.
Okay, so I was born in a refugee camp called Melat in Thailand, where the population is around 700,000 people. Most, including my family, are Karen, an ethnic group originally from Burma that has now spread all across the world. When I was 2, my parents fought very hard to leave the country because of the violent attacks that's still going on for 76 years now. Even though I don't remember pretty much anything, I grew up hearing a lot of stories, and I was surrounded by language, food, music, values, and opportunity. It's a big part of who I am and who I want to become, because I want to become an adult to where I can bring and give back to those who lost everything and give them hope, support, love, and opportunity they deserve.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. I think it's absolutely incredible that we have these 3 very insightful and intelligent and incredible students up here who are able to represent just how diverse that the APITA community is. And so May is APITA month, and APITA stands for Asian American Pacific Islander Desi American. And so the next question that we thought would be appropriate to answer, given that we are at an APITA festival, is going to be, students, how does or doesn't the term APITA resonate with you? To what an extent is it helpful to have these umbrella terms or categories? Do you feel that it creates a sense of unity or shared culture and heritage? So you ponder on that, Cece, whenever you're ready, and then we'll make our way back down.
Okay. The term APITA resonates with me because it makes my story heard when it can often be overlooked or misunderstood. To me, APITA brings together many different cultures and help create space for voices like mine to share our stories. It gives us an opportunity to talk about our cultures, represent where we come from, and make sure our traditions aren't forgotten. I believe umbrella terms like APITA creates a sense of unity, especially when we take time to learn and respect each other's background.
I definitely prefer the term APITA due to the fact that Asia is a very diverse country, and as much as usually I use AAPI, it does not encapsulate the whole of Asia as much as everyone would like it to seem. But APITA, when I first heard the term, is when I first moved here to Western Washington, and I definitely resonated it with deeply because it helped to expand the umbrella and included, more people instead, and it included all of Asia and not just a specific group of Asia, which I think is very important to create inclusivity because everyone should belong in this world.
Having an umbrella term like APITA comes with its pros and cons, and I think that's what this question is trying to get at. I appreciate the term APITA, including all of Asian, Pacific Islander, Desi American. It's trying to encapsulate all of us within the continent of Asia, and I really do appreciate the efforts that are being made to try and create this unity between us. But one of the biggest cons that I feel come with an umbrella term like APITA is the inability for our communities to come together. And that is something that, as a community leader within SASA, we have been trying to work on is how can we take APITA and take that term and actually signify that unity within our communities.
Thank you, you guys. I think, Raj, you touched on something that needs to be talked about more or something that is just important to address. So I kind of want to dive deeper a little bit into this question, a two-part question. Raj, you mentioned that there are some positive and negative connotations with the concept of APITA. Is there anybody else that can elaborate on that? My second part question would be, along with APITA, and like someone of you mentioned, AAPI, there are different umbrella terms such as AAPI, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, APITA, Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans, and AANHPI, Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. Do the three of you feel that any of these terms are better, or what are your thoughts? We can start with Raj.
To address the second question specifically, I do believe that APITA is a good umbrella term in the sense that it is encapsulating all of Asia as a continent. I think with all of these terms, the main flaw is that in a sense of within our communities, we want to hold our community safe and close to our chest. So when we put everything under an umbrella term, it's very difficult for us to work with one another just due to the harm and generational trauma that we've had with our communities. So even though I do think APITA is one of the better terms that have been used, it is still a underlying issue with any umbrella term in general.
To address the second question, right now I am actually reading a book called The Making of Asia America. I am still going through that book right now due to the fact it is very heavy, but the author touches on all of Asia and not specifically underlying a specific group. They address everyone in that all of Asia. So they just go through the entire history of the immigration of Asian Americans to America and also to South America. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that, yes, we do have a name for everyone, but also at the same time, we are all a community together. We come from different backgrounds, but we all share the same commonality that we are human, and we need to face a lot of our generational trauma and definitely things that hold us back with a lot of empathy and understanding towards each other, because we all have our own baggage, but that doesn't mean we can't be kind to each other.
I agree with Raj because, like he said, APITA creates like a sense of unity, but also like there's different parts, especially like because if somebody was to ask me like what my background was, I'll usually say like Southeast Asian, but it's way more complicated than that, and it's like I would say like because since I'm from refugee camp of Karen, a Karen tribe. Is there a sense of belonging here? I'll probably say yes, but also like no. But as long as we like learn and respect each other's background, I think that's very important and it creates a sense of unity. So yeah.
Thank you, Cece, Abby, and Raj. Wonderful answers. I think it is also really important to recognize that there are different terms of APIDA, AAPI, and so on and so on. And I think something that connects a lot of these communities are our ancestors. So kind of rolling into question number 3, we do know that ancestors play an important role in APIDA communities, partly because of the stories that they hold and share with the next generation. So students, as you grow older, what kind of ancestor would you like to be for your communities? What types of stories do you think that you would like to pass down to the next generation? You can take your time to think, and then Cece will start with you and work our way down.
As I grow older, I want to be kind of the ancestor who inspires others to dream big, make many mistakes as possible, do things out your comfort zone, and most importantly, to follow your heart. One of my biggest dreams is to become an entrepreneur and open up my own Thai dessert shop. Something cultural, meaningful, successful, and of course, yummy. My goal is not to just offer sweet treats, but to celebrate my roots and keep my culture alive, appreciated, and loved by everyone all around the world.
As I always think about the question of what I want to always be remembered by, I always strive to always think about the kindness that I wish and really want to bring more into the world and the empathy that comes with it. My teacher, Mr. Goin, in high school, he had a profound saying, which is, "We're all walking each other home." And, I definitely took that sick quote to heart of, we're all on different journeys and different paths, but in the end, we're going to the same place. So why not treat each other with kindness and empathy? And, if I can touch someone's soul and make their days a little bit better, then so be it. That's one of my biggest inspirations on why I want to be a nurse, is because, not a lot of healthy people go to hospitals. Usually I will see a lot more not so healthy people. And so if I can make their lives a little bit better and ease their paths and just make it more positive, then it is definitely something I really want to strive to be as an ancestor for the future generations of the future.
For myself, I know a lot of my personal ancestors had a distaste towards my family, and I wish to end that cycle of harm. A lot of South Asian men have difficulties addressing topics like mental health, their relationship with queerness and femininity. And within all of that, as an ancestor, I want to open up the space, be able to provide space, hold space even, for the future generation to have these almost inappropriate or taboo or questions and concepts. So that is kind of the role I would like to have as an ancestor.
Thank you, students. I love those answers, and I think everyone else here does too. Just going to speak for the rest of everyone here. We are moving on to our last questions. We are absolutely breezing through this. You guys are so prepared. So for the last question, and kind of tying in with what y'all talked about with food and school and family, the last question, with the theme this year of Legacy of Resistance, Justice, Healing, and Joy, students, how do you see yourself carrying forward that legacy in your own life? Whether it's through work, school, community involvement, creative expression, or personal values. Raj, if you're ready.
Yeah. One of my biggest roles at Western Washington University is that of a council member for the South Asian Student Association. This year, we've really focused on the resistance and resilience aspect of our world is being shaken up right now. In our political society within South Asia, India and Pakistan are going to war. And being able to through this year in and of itself, grow our community and show people that we have a safe space for people to come to, and taking time out of our meetings to discuss these difficult topics. It is kind of that resilience that I have been, not just myself, but the other council members that we have been able to create for our community.
Again, I want to mention the book, The Making of Asia America. And one of the first few chapters of the books, they actually talk about Filipino sailors that were paid less comparatively to their Spanish peers when it came to transporting different kinds of goods across the oceans. But even according to those notions that they were paid less and they were not treated what they were worth, a lot of Spanish sailors recount the fact that Filipinos were one of the hardest workers and they're very resilient, and somehow they always had a smile on their face even through so much strife and struggle. Even now, generationally, it has really reflected in the Filipino culture that we are not going to sit down and allow things to happen to us. Filipinos are, we're going to be around for as long as us humans are going to be around. And, if I can bring that resilience with me and just spread the sunshine and joy of the Filipino sun, it is part of our flag for a reason, because the sun touches everywhere. And, we spread the joy and happiness through dancing and music, like I've been taught throughout my entire childhood. And yeah, I don't know. It's a beautiful notion that I want to continue forward.
The stories I would pass down would be the ones that remind us of our people who have been fighting every day for as long as we can remember, fighting to survive, to be heard, and to preserve our identity. Our joy comes from being together and sharing meals and speaking our language, celebrating our traditions, and lifting each other up despite everything that we go through.
Thank you. I think some of y'all's answers answered my sub-questions, but I'm going to ask the sub-questions anyway and see if anyone is willing to elaborate a little bit. So with this theme of, once again, legacy of resistance, justice, healing, and joy, one question that we could add on that I would like to ask is, where and when in your life do you feel the need to resist, and what are you resisting against? Cece, if you have anything to add, you can start. Otherwise, we'll move our way down.
Carrying forward the legacy of resistance means honoring the struggles of those who came before me, while creating space for justice and healing and joy in my own life and community.
So my form of resisting through day-to-day life is just learning. And, learning is such an important thing because you gain so much knowledge. And with that, I think for me, when it comes to learning about people's different cultures and where they're from and their stories that they have, it creates more empathy in a space. And, my counselor and I, we've been definitely helping me just deconstruct my colonization mentality towards a lot of things. And one of them is just showing so much empathy and care for yourself of where you come from, And I think it's really important as a form of resistance.
My form of showing resistance, of obviously adding on to the learning, is also showing up for our communities. At Western, we have a space called the ESC, the Ethnic Student Center, where it's just a beautiful place where anyone can come in and just take time to relax, study, and just talk with friends. But as a leader in that space, we're able to hear about all the events that are going on on campus, all the tabling and all the resilience that other clubs are doing, and being able to participate and show support and allyship is one way that I personally show resistance.
Thinking about it further, one of my biggest plans that I'm planning on getting is my batok tattoos. If you don't know what batok is, it is the tribal version of Filipino tattoos. With the tattoos, it represents where your family is from, and it's kind of the way that we used to use it pre-colonial times was to symbolize where your family is from, and kind of like, for me as a girl, they would sometimes put some fertilization charms, so may you have good fortune and, you know, good kids to come. And unfortunately, the practice has been lost throughout time due to the fact of colonization. They have, you know, unfortunately, it's been stifled and the practice is sadly dying out. And same with mythology of the people that were once originally from there. And it is definitely something that knowledge I resonate with deeply, of trying to learn more and bringing back some pre-colonial aspects of my culture to the more popularized media. So there is more representation of my family, so they are not forgotten forever.
I love. Thank you all. Abby, you made a perfect segue into my very last question for y'all. We're going to kind of turn it a little bit from resistance to healing and joy. So, starting with Cece, whenever you're ready, the question, the last one for tonight is, what brings you and your community's healing and joy?
I already answered this on accident. Oops. But yeah, I think coming together as one and bringing our communities in. It could be like anybody like coming in, speaking our language, like outside or in the house, celebrating our traditions. And yeah, just being there for each other whenever we need it. And even when we don't need it, just being there to lift each other up.
So my family and I are from Eastern Washington. I just moved here last September to start school, and unfortunately, there is not a large Filipino community in my rural town of 225 people, last time I checked the census. So we were very thankful to find a Filipino American Association in the local Spokane area, which is around 2 hours from where I live. And every year we get together for Christmas parties where we celebrate our traditional dances, and everyone is welcome to join in. And we always talk about highlighting our different provinces that we're from and the stories that are held with it. And everyone brings food, we dance, we sing, and it's a beautiful moment that I adore so much, even as a kid, learning how to do the tinikling, even though it's very scary for your ankles, and especially as a young kid, it was very scary. But you know, with the encouragement of the community of members around me, I was able to kind of get over my fear of dancing the tinikling. But you know, just they helped to make me more unapologetic about myself and where I'm from. And you know, I think that's how I will spread the joy.
Similarly for me, even after my parents immigrated here, one thing that we always had in the household was music and dance. Were we good dancers? No. But just being in a space with my family, people that genuinely care about me, and just being able to goof off, dance, sing recklessly, it's such a healing thing for when our shadows carry such heavy weights that we may not realize, but we are carrying those with us every day. So incorporating music, dance, singing is something that we have incorporated into Sasa as well, and something that I've incorporated personally into my own life whenever I have free time or whenever I'm stressed. Just a 5-minute little like shake off relieves that level of stress. And that is how I want to spread joy as well.
Thank you so much, Cece, Abby, and Raj. We really appreciate your vulnerability and taking the time to open up about who you are and your cultures and communities. Let's give it one more big round of applause for our incredible students here. Woo, 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 woo. Thank you all so much again. As our students exit, I am very excited to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight's event. So, if you could also bring your hands back together for our keynote speaker, Keek Araki Kawaguchi, to the stage.
I just want to thank the organizers of today's event. It took so many folks significant time and energy and resources to bring us together. Thank you, Whatcom Community College, for housing and for hosting us. Thank you to the other speakers and performers today who are sharing their explorations around these themes of resistance, justice, healing, and joy. And for helping me in my own modest ways to strengthen my commitment to resistance, justice, healing, and joy. I wanted to begin today with a cento. Cento is a poetic form of collage, and so it works through the collection of language from other artists and poets and speakers. The origins of the term come from Greek to Latin to plant slips, young shoots and trees, and patchwork garment. And I love the spirit of those origins, patchwork and new saplings. And I see the form as a linguistic tapestry that through collection and curation and additional presentation, they can help me see the world with a new clarity. So this is a cento in the making from the event so far, attributed to those wonderful speakers who came before me. So these are not my words, these are their words. If you hear just a hum in the room, I have the privilege of speaking with you briefly. There's no work that is too little or too high. It's way more complicated than that. Through my mom's kindness, my dad is the DJ, the collective strength of our communities. We want to hold our community safe to our chest. Everyone should belong in this world. Make as many mistakes as possible, and the empathy that comes with it. Open up the space. One of my biggest roles, we have a safe space through so much strife and struggle. Through my mom's kindness, my dad is the DJ. Were we good dancers? Yeah. All right. That's for them. So as a teacher, I'll encourage you to write your own centos today. They're wonderful learning tools. There's little notebooks around you. And if you begin to share your cento with me later, I'll invite you all to do that too. My email is there. I feel it's fitting for the APITA event to be hosted in a space for education, a space for students, since it's often students who are doing this work of making our world a more accepting, more expansive, less judgmental world. And as a teacher, I thought I'd share some things I've learned from student leaders, folks who have helped me to make my college teaching methods and my classroom environment more inclusive and more effective and more joyful, typically by encouraging me to make the classroom a more welcoming and collaborative space. And so I've compiled a list. Something I'd like to suggest is that these are things that you can ask for as a student. Many teachers will actively seek ideas from students in the first week and throughout a class. But even if they don't, I think it's well within your rights as a student to suggest some ideas I'm going to share with you. Let's see. There we go. So from what I've learned in teaching, there's little chance for a classroom to be a space of healing or joy if folks don't feel welcome or accepted. And I imagine it would be difficult to have meaningful conversations around the human brain or the environment or art or technology or history if we haven't taken a little time to know each other's names or a little about the community's collective background. And so if you're in a classroom where you don't know anyone, it's okay to ask, right? Could we spend a few minutes this week learning each other's names? I think it would be difficult to have meaningful conversations about law or political science or social welfare or identity, race, gender, sexuality, class, if we didn't feel a sense of mutual respect, security, and clarity. Community guidelines are a set of expectations for encouraging respectful interactions, and if there's a guideline that would make you feel more willing to participate, it helps the teacher to know that, and it's likely to help other students too. There are folks here tonight who come from a lot of different places and generations, and I hope that classrooms are getting better at including content with diverse representation. Our country may not always feel like a place that values its people from every background. And if we see that inequality reflected in a classroom environment, I think it's within the right of the student to say, when I see that course materials include writers and scholars who look like me, it makes me feel excited about the class. And I feel like my perspective is going to be valued in this course. When a teacher does this, I know I can be more active and effective as a participant in this course. Days like today that celebrate the diversity of human experience, they don't have to be just for special occasions. They can be something that educators plan for regularly, and you can help them to do that. All right. And if you see the need for building community, and you don't think it will be addressed by the teacher, you can help the teacher and other students by building something yourself. So you can say, I'm new to this topic, and so I'd love to start a study group with other folks who are also new to this topic. And I'm going to work on my homework right after class, and I will share my lunch with you. And you're allowed to create your own educational spaces if you need them. And this in-between educational space that you create, it can be a huge asset to everyone. A lot of people in this room are, well, I took my glasses off, so I can't see you that well. But a lot of people in this room, I think, are Asian, and which I'll acknowledge. And so if you're anything like me, I feel like sometimes asking for things can feel a little bit difficult, because some of us were taught that asking for anything extra is impolite. And so I'm here to say that being assertive in this way is not being impolite. Being assertive in this context helps everyone, including the teacher. And I know that because these were suggestions made to me when I was the teacher. And if other folks judge your assertiveness as being impolite, then that's on them and not you. These requests could have a positive impact on the educational experiences of everyone, you, your peers, your teacher, and lots of students who come after you. All right, that's my grandma holding my book. So now we'll talk a little bit about resistance. In particular, today I thought I would talk about counter-narrative. The context around that book that my grandmother is holding, a lot of people likely know some of the history. There's a lot of relevant history leading up to the relocation and incarceration of Japanese Americans in the 1940s. These are yellow peril images. They were pervasive in America in the early 1900s, and there was a lot of anxiety about East Asians conquering the Western world. And so you have a lot of anti-Asian racism and xenophobia fomenting for years, not just against the Japanese. There were immigrants coming from all over East and Southeast Asia by the late 1800s and early 1900s. And then racism and xenophobia often gets converted into law. And so you have the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, just an example, which prohibits Chinese laborers from coming to America, certainly from being naturalized. And then that was followed by a number of alien land laws that prohibit immigrants from owning land or agricultural land, and this included folks from China, Korea, India, and Japan. So you have a lot of racially motivated fear and discrimination that's building for a long time. This is a cartoon by Dr. Seuss, Theodore Geisel, who was a proponent of Japanese internment in World War II. He was convinced that the Japanese that were living in America were going to try to sabotage the country from the inside. And then you have the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 by the Japanese military. And there was never a case, a Japanese-American person convicted of acts of espionage or sabotage. But the surprise and the fear from this event served as a justification to incarcerate Japanese immigrants and Japanese Americans based on a military need. There was also a pretty clear financial incentive for white farmers to kick Japanese farmers out of the West Coast. This is a quote from the managing secretary of the Salinas Vegetable Growers Shipper Association. And it caught my eye because my father grew up so close to Salinas. And he says, quote, "We're charged with wanting to get rid of the Japs for selfish reasons. We do. If all the Japs were removed tomorrow, we'd never miss them in 2 weeks because the white farmers can take over and produce everything the Jap grows. And we do not want them back when the war ends either." And then you have Executive Order 9066, which authorized the Secretary of War to clear military zones of enemy aliens. So in this case, enemy aliens, anyone of Japanese descent, military zones, basically the West Coast. So Washington, Oregon, and California. And Japanese Americans were told to pack a bag. And they were transported on trains to these camps. There were camps all over, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Arizona. About 120,000 folks being relocated. This is the Gila River Relocation Center. It's where my grandparents were interned. And I started having conversations about my grandparents' experiences in camp when I was in high school. And my grandpa would tell a lot of wild stories. He would tell this story a lot. It was about my grandma and grandpa. After they met in camp, they got married there. And my grandmother was pregnant with her first daughter, my mom's older sister. And the story goes that there was a rationing of meat in the camp, but my grandmother wanted hamburgers. And so my grandfather would hide out in the back of the bread trucks, and the bread trucks would leave camp, and then they would pull over to reload in a town called Casa Grande. And while the bread truck was being reloaded, my grandpa would leap out, run to the nearest diner, and then he would buy all the hamburgers he could buy. Then he would jump back into the bread truck, and he would smuggle those hamburgers to my grandmother. It wasn't his only smuggling story. And so when my grandparents were first relocated, they were in a place called the Tulare Assembly Center. And my grandpa said he did the same thing there. Jumped into the back of a bread truck, left camp, somehow made it to the nearest Chinatown in this case, where he bought all the cigarettes and whiskey he could afford. And he was then caught jaywalking with his whiskey by police, which was awkward because the police thought that all people of Japanese ancestry were behind barbed wire. And the story goes, my grandpa had to pretend he only spoke Chinese so that the police would leave him alone. And then he jumped back into the bread truck and went back to camp and got drunk with his friends and traded the cigarettes for ukulele lessons. So as a young person, these stories struck me as strange because when you hear that your family member was imprisoned on the basis of his ancestry, on the basis of his race, and the woman he loved had to buy her wedding dress and ring from a Sears catalog to be delivered to a barrack in Arizona because she was imprisoned on the basis of her race. And the baby they both loved was imprisoned because the baby was a dangerous enemy alien who was about to dominate all the white people in America. You might expect his stories to be a little bit sad. And what I used to think upon hearing these stories was, Grandpa, you are weird. You're a weird grandpa, is what I used to think. And so why are all of your internment stories about getting drunk and making raisin wine and partying? And why are all your stories so weirdly funny? Why are they so often about falling in love? And shouldn't you be telling me stories about how sad or angry or defeated that you felt? And a lot of the stories he would tell were some of these dreamy stories, like he would be teleported in his dreams from camp back to California, where he could imagine picking the strawberries. It was like strawberry season. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized that my grandpa had all those feelings that I suspected he had. He had felt sad and angry and defeated for some of the time, and had felt less than human some of the time. But the stories he told most often were of the moments he felt most alive. And because these were ways for him to assert that he was human and that he was constructing his dignity in the ways so many of us construct our dignity, which is around the people that we love, the relationships we value, and the moments of our lives when we feel lucky and powerful. This is Richard Delgado, a legal scholar, also a distinguished professor of law just down the street at Seattle University School of Law. He wrote a brilliant essay called Storytelling for Oppositionists and Others. And a key idea in his essay is that people have storytelling in their blood. We understand our world and our lives through stories. We understand it through mainstream narratives like big box office films, through the news we consume, through our history books, social media. And it is the tendency of mainstream narratives, as he calls them, dominant narratives, to feed the brain stories of fear, because the brain is particularly attracted to noticing threats and remembering them. I was originally a psychology major in school, and there's a psychological phenomenon called a negativity bias, and the research shows that our brains find threatening or negative stories to be the most memorable or influential. But for Delgado, this is really scary because so often mainstream narratives are training the brain to fear people with the least amount of power in our community. Usually people of color, undocumented people, unhoused people, people with mental illnesses, immigrants, refugees, queer people. And when the brain is taught to fear, and if that is paired with a structural advantage for a majority population, you can end up with some very scary structures of oppression, including prisons in the middle of the desert for 120,000 people. What about resistance? Richard Delgado is asking, if the brain is so often trained to fear through stories, can it be also trained to do the opposite through stories? And if so, what is the formula for these counter narratives? There's my grandpa. What I'd like to propose is that counter narratives are similar to the ones my grandpa used to tell me about camp. Stories where he was cast as the star, and stories that are adamant that his humanity is as unique and as worthy as anyone else's. Stories that restore his dignity upon the things that he cared most about, the people that he loved, the relationships he valued, and the moments of his life when he felt most alive and most powerful. And there's a lot of different formulas for how folks create their own counter narratives. Just one example is George Takei's phenomenal graphic novel, They Called Us Enemy, which is about his family's experience in the internment camps. If you're a Star Trek fan, you may know Takei had a founding role in Star Trek Enterprise, where he played a character called Hikaru Sulu. I think it was really smart for him to tell his story in comics form, since comics are often where we learn about heroes and where we learn about power, and sometimes where we learn about who is more human than others. And I think we can see his understanding that the tool used to dehumanize could also be used to rehumanize. And I think he wanted to show that a single family story was worthy to be told in a medium so often associated with our heroes. And also, he wanted to show us visually all the complications of their predicament and the individual gestures and expressions and tears. There's me and George Takei. I only got to touch him for about 10 seconds, but it was a healing and a joyful 10 seconds. As I said, there are a lot of different ways you can get to your counter narrative. And as a way to do this, I think there are some pens and some paper around. And I'm going to take you through a guided poetry activity where we hope to arrive at a braided counter-narrative. You don't need any training to write today's poem. It's my belief that poems are kind of like your ancestors. They're already inside of you, and they wait in you like a sleeping constellation, and you'll just need to kind of turn the stars on every once in a while. So I'd like to suggest is that you write in your own voice with feeling and clarity and confidence, and write with the first ideas that emerge in your mind, and the poem will appear. The intention to write poetry in of itself, I see as a counter-narrative tool. Quick aside, at the Angel Island immigration station in the early 1900s, Chinese laborers were detained. They had to go through rigorous interrogations for many days sometimes to prove they were related to American citizens. And until those interrogations were over, they were imprisoned there. And later discovered were poems by detainees carved into the walls. Because poems assert the presence of a person worthy of attention and justice and joy. So we'll start with that. I'd like you to identify the name of a person you love. For example, an ancestor or a guardian. This can be the name of someone who's passed away. They are going to be cast at the center of this poem. Write down their full name, first, middle, nicknames, last name. And the title of your poem is, This is a Poem for Your Loved One. Now, recall a surprising talent that your loved one has or had, and I want you to dial that talent up into the mythic register. And then write a line that begins with the word who, and follow it with their mythic feat. Write that line, who accomplished this mythic feat. And then follow that with a line that identifies a specific date or a range for when your loved one accomplished that feat. That date and the range, it can be in the mythic register too. Now I want you to follow that with a line about your loved one doing something mundane, maybe a common chore that you've seen them do. One line about that, your loved one doing something mundane, maybe a chore you've seen them do. And then write 2 lines about a weather event you experienced with your loved one. 2 lines about a weather event you experienced with your loved one. Write a line about a sensation you associate with your loved one. A sensation, a smell, a taste you associate with your loved one. And then write a line about a broken or challenging relationship your loved one attempted to heal. And then write a line about a problem your loved one would like you to help solve in your lifetime. And follow that with a line attempting to describe how your loved one's voice makes you feel. A line describing how your loved one's voice makes you feel. Then remix this line, make it your own, write your own version. Her voice is in me when I do not want to sing alone. Just a few more. I know this is kind of an intense poetry activity. Just a few more. Write a line about something you're worried about right now. And then write 2 speculative lines about a day in the future when you will need to draw upon the strength of your loved one. 2 speculative lines about a day in the future when you'll need to draw upon the strength of your loved one. And then remix this line, make it your own. Her voice and my voice are in the wind. Make your own version. Now write a line that completes this thought. Once I laughed so hard I cried when my loved one did this. Complete that thought. Once I laughed so hard I cried when. I know folks here would love it if you contributed your braided counter-narrative poem to the living timeline outside. You can choose a date from your poem, or you could use your loved one's date of birth. If you do leave your poem here tonight, you might want to take a picture of it before you leave. And the prompt for the counter-narrative poem is also outside. If you'd like to take it with you, remix it, make it your own. Thank you for writing with me, and thank you for letting me join you today.